Fellas, let's talk about manifold maintenance, if you could call it that. So exhaust manifold maintenance. This unit has 513,424 miles, but about 300 miles ago, I finally replaced the manifold, and it's a known issue on these things. So let's talk some basics. How and what I did to preserve the manifold, to help it. So, let's talk about, as an operator, what you can do, and also you as an operator, you need to understand what the metals are doing and the difference of metals you have and why they're doing what they're doing. All right? So, from my experience and what's worked well for me is warming up the vehicle and cooling off the vehicle. So, just like anything else, oils to function right, gaskets, you need to warm up your vehicle before you put a load on it. Just like anybody, they don't get out of bed and start lifting weight. They warm up. There's warm-ups to things, just like any system or body, or like I said, any system that needs to be implemented, right? It needs to warm up. So, with that being said, I don't sit there and wait till operating temp, but definitely if the vehicle is going to tow, I let it warm up, and I let it warm up, 120 at least Fahrenheit. Don't ask why 120. 120 is more than 100, but because in the winter it's hard to get up to those temps, and that 120 is coolant temp, right? I like to see 100 on the oil, but doesn't necessarily always happen. So take what you get, and obviously I'm talking about winter numbers. So by the time the oil warms up, the coolant warms up, the metals have their chance to warm up as well. And quite frankly, oil and coolant is what cools off the metals. So the metals are north of that temperature. So, as I said, there's nothing scientific about it, but at the same time, I'm trying to explain myself. I'm not an engineer, nor do I claim to be one, but I'm just sharing what works for me. Might work for you too. So before I get to towing, I like to see 120 coolant. In a perfect world, north of 160, 170 is where it should be at. But hell, sometimes in the winter, you can't get up to 160, 170 sitting there and idling your truck that breathes well. So, take it for what it is. 120 is my number. Next thing, another one is cooling your vehicle off. Right now is 55 degrees ambient, right? And I'm towing pretty heavy. I'm towing this 18,000 pound, a little more, a little less. I feel like it's a little more. Plus the trailer, I'm about 27,000 pounds behind this truck, and it's doing phenomenally. And my oil temp, coolant temp are within check, but don't be fooled. So right now, you got to understand that the metal is working pretty hard. The combustion chamber got plenty of heat in it, hence that's why your oil is north of your coolant, right? So the combustion chamber and oil squirting on the backside of the cylinder, pulling the heat off of it is a big contribution to your heat, and so is the rest of the operating engine. So the fact that it's within spec does not mean if I were to pull over this vehicle, shut it off, I can guarantee you in 5 minutes when I start this vehicle up, the temps are going to be significantly higher. I shouldn't say significant, but noticeably higher. So what that tells me is that this temperature that you see isn't necessarily stabilized temperature. It's a fighting temperature, meaning the metal is hotter, but the oil is cooling it off at its capability, capacity, whatever you want to label. So at 55 ambient, if I were to pull over right now, I would at minimum idle this thing for 10 minutes. Just let it idle, let it bring itself to temp. Just because you see temps within range doesn't mean it's time to shut it off. You want those fluids, your oil and your coolant, to pull the heat out of the metal before you shut it off. Hence, that's why my turbo, that 500,000, I did an actuator on this thing, and I was just blown away. Like, I could not tell this turbo has 500,000, right? The bearings there, the vanes are shifting just perfectly. Just, it's hard to say 500, because I'm seeing, you know, maybe a 80 to 100,000 mile turbo. The bearings don't have play in them like I would see with 200-300,000 average truck that comes in for service, right? Keep in mind, we run a service shop as well, so it's not just our fleet. We see other fleets as well. The vanes are just moving freely, and that's another contribution to my fact of understanding the metals. And it's a testament, the fact that the turbo is operating. Your first thing that's going to go if you fail your temps is your turbo, in my honest opinion. I feel like you can screw up a turbo faster than you can screw up these Cummins engines. So that's super important. If the ambient temperature would be north of 70, this is what I do. As long as the temperature is within range, something, you know, under 200,000 on coolant and oil, and I'm in a hurry, right? I can't give it the 15 minutes that I want. That's the nice thing about keyless entry. I'll literally glance down, these temps are fine. I'll get out of the vehicle and remote start the truck. That'll give me 15 minutes of idle time. This vehicle could cool itself off. Now, if the ambient temperature is north of 90 degrees outside and I'm in a hurry, well, too bad. Unless it's a dire situation and for whatever reason this truck needs to be shut off, this truck's not getting shut off. This truck's I'm gonna walk out of it, lock it, and let it idle for 20 minutes. Those are numbers of a towing vehicle. Those are numbers when you tow with your vehicle, because the heavier you tow, the harder it works, and the harder your engine works, the more heated the metal is, right? Well, I'm on the flats. Let's see. Why at 12 psi am I running 192? I'll tell you, or 194 oil. I'll tell you why. Because the combustion chamber is significantly higher, the temps, than it would be just idling, just cruising down the flats, right? So that's the biggest thing that you can do to preserve your vehicle. Let it cool off. Just let it do its thing. Extreme temp, let's just say once in a while, I'm out of Washington, Spokane, and sometimes, you know, north of 100, I'll just set my cruise. And you know what I mean by saying cruise. Set high idle. You need the higher speed because your fan is mechanical. It can't spin any faster than your engine's running, right? So bump up your RPM, and as that clutch is engaging and disengaging, you truck guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You have better flow, and you cool off your engine better. And how do you cool it off? Well, Paul, you're warming up your engine at high idle. I'm cooling it off far more than I'm warming it up at a high idle at those temps, right? So you got to consider it both ways. So, yeah. Idle, super important to idle the vehicle. And you think that's important with your oils and stuff? Now you got to listen to the metals. Most of you guys ruin your manifolds as well. So as the manifold, right, the first thing that, besides the combustion chamber, what else gets the heat? Right there next to the combustion chamber, as those gases come out, the head and the manifold. Hence, that's why the manifold always goes south on a lot of guys. Because the head is one piece of metal, part of the combustion and all that, it has adapted to the temperature, is expanded, contrasted, done its thing, it's one solid piece. Your manifold is a different piece. Also, it's different metal. So it's expanding, contracting at a whole different rate. Man, what is going on? It's bumpy out here. Bump my airbags a little bit. Bumpy ride could be low pressure in your airbags or too high as well. I believe we're about 55 psi, so that's good. Anyways, that's the biggest thing, guys, that people just kind of completely dismiss. The fact that your manifold is a different metal and a different piece of metal. It's expanding, contracting at a different rate. Remember I told you I warmed up the vehicle? And it's all not just that. Well, it's exactly this. Your metal gaskets that sit between your head and your exhaust manifold aren't expanded. They're not tight. They're not where they're supposed to be at, right? The bolts don't have that pressure that they need to have. And I mean, I'm just nitpicking at stuff here, but I'm telling you what's taking them out. Also, what's taken out the manifold is those two metals expanding, contracting out of different. In an extreme case, like it's 100 degrees outside, you've just towed and you're pissing your pants because you need to get into that rest stop. Well, let your truck cool off. I know some states don't allow you to idle, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes. Just lock your vehicle and go inside. If you're worried about someone breaking your window and driving away with your vehicle, hop out of your vehicle, remote start it. They're not going to get anywhere. Anyways, guys, the biggest key here is your metals extracting, contracting at different rates. Now, those manifolds that are blue, sometimes you pop the hood and that manifold is discolored. That's extreme temperature. Now, these trucks were never intended to run that kind of temperature. When the owner, the operator, whatever you want to label it, well, at this point it's the operator, driving behind that steering wheel and the truck's not pulling right, let it be your after treatment's plugged up or your boost system, your intercooler has a hole in it. You're not running full optimal full optimal range. So what's going on there is you're trying to goose it and you're trying to get all that hot air out the pipe, and it's all plugged up because you just idled it all day and now you're trying to clean it out. It's just, there's so many things I want to say. I'm trying to stay focused here. One of the big things, guys, when you clean stuff, take it easy, take it slowly. Okay, I'll go back to the subject here. So your after treatment's plugged up and you're goosing it, trying to clean it out, and it's trying to do a regen, and those are some extreme heats. That's another reason. That's the main reason why these manifolds go out at 70,000 miles, 100,000 miles. And the average manifold life that I'm seeing in these Ford Gens are 200 to 300,000. Now, keep in mind, we've changed out just hundreds of these things. It's a common thing around the shop. Sometimes it's the gaskets, sometimes it's the bolts. Well, the bolts just don't snap on them own. The manifold's been heated so badly that the expansion just snapped the bolts off. That's how bad people ride their vehicles, just till they quit. So let's go down the list and wrap up this video. Temperature. You need proper temperature in that manifold. You don't want to just start boosting and pulling. There's a lot more to go around and wrong than just your manifold. When you just start your engine on a cold engine, start pulling loads now. But as far as the manifold goes, get it up to temp. Get it to warm up. Also, when you're about to park your vehicle and all this stuff, it's 99% towing rigs. When you're just pop-punting around town, your booty, you don't got any extreme temps in that engine. I know it's hot outside. I know it's really hot under that engine bay. But your manifold isn't glowing red because you just pulled 10 miles of 7% hill with the gooseneck, or some extreme load, some heavy load, or even a container. It's not that heavy, but man, is it a brick, and it stresses out your equipment. So that. Now, another thing I did vaguely mention is your intercooler system and your after treatment, guys. You got to consider your tools. You got to check your intercooler system. You got to check it for leaks, and you got to make sure your after treatment's breathing right. And one of my videos, or I don't know if I've released that video yet or not, there's a 22 Ram with 100,000-ish, and that thing was just pouring soot out the back because that poor thing was just plugged shut. That truck got towed in my shop because it was plugged shut. Bueno, no deal, right? There's going to be a lot more problems than just after treatment at that point if your truck can't run because it's so plugged up. Anyways, fellas, I got to wrap up this video. Just wanted to wish you all a good day, God's blessings, and a mighty fine one, I guess. As always, have a good one, guys. In the comment section, let me know. I know these videos aren't for everybody, but I'm just going to do my thing. You guys keep watching, I'll keep posting. You guys stop watching, I'll stop posting. Let me know which topics you want covered, and we'll go from there. As always, God bless you, bye.